Howdy, of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Season 2, Episode 4 of Stanley's Lucky Man. So, if anything, if I probably griped about the last episode, really, I think this episode did, make up for the goofiness of the last episode. I think this episode was okay, so, every episode is like a gimmick, but I actually did enjoy this episode, and plus also it does start to feel like I'm starting to understand where this story is to be heading, especially through this episode. I could tell, oh, okay, it kind of gets to a point where you're kind of assuming who could quite possibly be the culprit in this episode, because really, I think in a lot of other episodes, there's just some random thing that occurs during the episode where you're naturally not assuming that it's going to be a person up until it's too quick of a scene to just oh, okay, that's the killer, that's the guy, that's the bad dude. Oh, okay. Because a lot of times you don't really know who the real true villain is until the very end, or they kind of give it to you early. So, it's always either some random person or it's somebody that you're just oh, okay, I guess it's this person now. And that's probably the most annoying thing of some episodes, where I'm just man, I wish I could think of it's not going to be like Columbo, where immediately when you go into Columbo, you have Columbo that's in there let me just ask you one more question, and then immediately you're oh, okay, well, that person's the killer. But also they basically show you who the killer actually is in the very beginning of the sequence. For me, I would just be hey, let me ask you one more question, and then immediately I'd naturally assume that that's the killer. Or Monk would watching Monk, Monk would be yeah, I think he's the killer, and I'm just gonna keep going at it until I can figure out how I can prove it. Or what evidence I can have to prove that this is the killer. I've seen so many detective shows. I've had to forcibly watch those. I'm not a detective show person, but eventually, if there's some kind of gimmick with a detective show, then immediately that will probably win me over, and I'll go into it. And I watched a lot of detective shows, but they always have to have some gimmick to them for me to be interested. Otherwise, I'm just I can't just watch a normal detective show. It's too boring for me. There's got to be some extra thing in it. And so luckily this was one of those that it seemed that people were interested enough about this. So, but yeah, I really liked this episode. I was sold. Just because immediately once the episode was to start, this was to be about a driverless car who was to kill someone. And I was okay, you've got my attention. It seems like in this episode they go through a kind of techie stuff in this episode. And yeah, I thought that this episode was really interesting. I think it really was one episode that kind of consistently grabbed my attention. And plus, also, I was really just coming up with who I thought the killer was. And then all of a sudden, the story would change. And I'm oh, crap, is this not this person? And then all of a sudden, I'm oh, I guess it's not. Or maybe it is. Who knows? But anyways, so I thought that this episode was good. It was a good episode from the last one, where I was just kind of oh, this episode is just a garbage way to write around of it, a way about it, I mean, with the whole writing thing. But I kind of felt that way towards the end of season 1 also, where I kind of felt the episode wasn't exactly written very well, where it came down to the Eve and Julian thing, and how he was just to be having to force all those things together. But anyways, we also get to have a little bit more of backstory of Isabel and Eve in this episode. And so also Harry gets a little bit of dialogue with Eve in this episode that is starting to get very interesting. For I think Harry is realizing that something that he is with a lot lately is going to eventually lead into a toxic uh, toxic thing that is going to have him forcibly uh, maybe pull away from something, let's just say, in a very cryptic like sense. So with that said, yeah, like it gets to also the point where Harry is really using his bracelet to like the nth degree. Man, Harry is really just kind of like, yeah, I know, like, I know you're the killer, so like I know that you might be the killer, so if anything, like I'm gonna use like my powers of the bracelet to figure out a way to get you here, and so on and so forth. So like I could have also gone and done this a number of different ways. Then maybe I could have assessed that it could have actually been a certain person's uh, like assistant in this episode, and I could have gone through like because there's two technical assistants, so more than likely when I talk about the in spoilers, you'll get what I mean. So I liked this episode. Winning over. I've talked about this too much. So plus also, I really love the fact that we consistently keep tying Winter and Harry together, and even to the point of them like spending time together. And I'm really liking that about each one of these episodes, where it seems that Winter is being tied into the story a lot more. I'm loving that fact. I like that part is like the best part of the show. Just these little dialogues that they have between one another is just so much fun. So let's go into it. Let's go into that double five time territory because it's that coveted time yet again to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we did spoil this movie or this show, episode, season 2, 4. Yeah, let's get into it. So, spoilers. So, in the very beginning of this episode, we have Harry and we have Isabel who are to go out at night, and there is all of a sudden to be a burglar or a mugger or whatever you want to say it. Basically, just trying to pull off a Bruce Wayne kind of event, and Harry goes to this mugger. It's like, I dance with the devil in the. Like, have you ever danced with the devil? And the mugger's like, so what now? And so, like, this is so much like a Bruce Wayne Batman scenario. It's weird, but bizarrely, this is a Stan Lee thing. So I don't know. I don't get what that whole thing was. But so we just see this mugger who is to be tied up because frickin' Harry and Isabel are to have a like a double bracelet lucking out thing. So they tie this guy up and they write in lipstick on his head that this was not his lucky day. So transition after the date with Harry and Isabel. We have Eve and Isabel having a conversation with one another. And so a bulk of this conversation is to have us find out that Eve was tied to the deaths of Isabel's daughters. And because since Eve had given Isabel this bracelet, come to find out that Eve was just like going and using her luck so much so that on the opposite end of things, Isabel's daughters died because of Isabel consistently just using this luck, not having a care in the world, thinking that nothing would happen to her daughters. And so Isabel's daughters died, and so Eve is like, you know what? Like, I miss you sometimes, but also there's a lot of times when I have dreams when I just want to just tear your eyes out or just kill you or whatever. And so that transitions us to Harry going on a case with Surrey about a driverless car, and it was at a launch event. So this prototype driverless car ended up going uh, off of a barrier, but supposedly this barrier was pre-made to be very weak. So they find out that Mary Wells and Davy Wells were in the car, but Davy Wells had got out of the car to make a call, and Mary Wells had been in this car and went beyond this barrier and died. So so that transitions both Harry and Surrey to just well, it must have been Davy who killed her, because coincidentally, it's kind of perfect that this guy had gotten a call at that specific time. So Harry and Surrey go to Davy's office to talk to his assistant, who is Lakshmi Pereira, and so that leads to have Lakshmi mention that Davy is not in his office, and supposedly, I guess he was sick, or there were some other reasons why he was not there. So, but that leads Harry to eventually go to the company involved in the whole driverless car thing. And that was to be Spikesley or Spikey or Spikesy. So Harry and Surrey go to speak with Rachel Spikes and Woody Gilbert. Gilbert is Rachel's assistant. So really, this conversation that they are to really just have is to be about that Harry is old and all kinds of things, and that Harry bizarrely is watching them play a video game, and it's is this your work? And so Woody is no, it's for fun. And so they're talking about the way of which that this car could have malfunctioned, and checking to see could there possibly be any kind of percentage or any kind of way that this car could have malfunctioned. And Rachel's well, there's a 0% chance that this car could have malfunctioned. And they're well, okay, so there's no way that this could have at all gone on its own and just killed this woman. And Rachel's well, that's what a 0% thing is. So so Harry and Surrey go back to the office to have Winter mention that they had downloaded some recording from off this black box from this driveless car to find out that Davy and Mary were having some marriage troubles. It seems that they were having a dialogue mentioning how they were kind of just doing this they were just doing this for the people, and really they just hated one another. So but that leaves Harry back with Isabel. And so again, Harry is kind of talking about his case with Isabel, and that leads to Isabel just going well, hey, why can't you just go to Davy's apartment, his place. So Harry goes to Davy's place to find out the security man said that Davy's not at home. So Harry goes on to forcibly go up there and check the apartment anyways. And so Harry's to find out that Lakshmi Pereira and Davey are having an affair. And so Harry's like, wow, you work fast kind of deal. And so Harry breaks in there to speak with Davey because he needs answers. And so Harry also takes Davey's laptop with him. And because Davey almost swings a punch and misses, not hitting Harry, but Harry's like, well, I'm going to go and charge you for assaulting an officer. So, if anything, Harry is to bring Wells in, and immediately when Wells is to be walked to the interrogation room. One, we end up finding out that Orwell is to find out that this couple was to get a divorce, but also when Wells is to eventually make his way to the interrogation room, we have Johnny Hawthorne, who is actually with Anna, go and like basically help Wells like lawyer up. Wells or Johnny is mentioning all this stuff that is to have Wells be in the clear, and that really Harry has no real true like proof, with the exclusion of the laptop, of what of anything is to go on. And so Johnny is like, yeah, and Davey is going to need that laptop soon. So uh and so what ends up happening is Harry does not want to release the laptop, and so Harry decides that he's going to take the laptop and try to get it hacked into to see if Harry can find out anything about Davy's laptop. And because evidently Surrey was trying to get into it, but there was an encryption on it that she couldn't crack. So Harry goes on to a subway, and all of a sudden we are to see Stan Lee, of all people, talking to Harry. And so Stan Lee all of a sudden is to walk off. And I'm like, yeah, Stan Lee! Like, here's another cameo for this guy. Like, I guess maybe he probably was busy in, like, the first other episodes. So maybe Stan Lee was just like, hey, I'll make a cameo in every one of these. Why not? So, anyways... Harry is to make his way into a subway to talk to Rachel Spikes and to try to get her to crack things of this laptop to try to find out if there was to be some kind of hacking or virus or something being done. So, and so eventually, Rachel is to find out information on this. And so Harry is like, okay, like what had happened. So she'd mentioned that there had been some virus, and so that evidently like Davy's laptop was hacked. And so Harry's like, okay, great. So Harry goes home to eventually have Winter stop by to like have dinner with him. And so coincidentally, at some point Isabel was to text Harry like if he wanted to get wicked with her, and Harry's like, no, busy, work, whichever. But anyways, so uh Harry and Winter are having dinner together. And so Winter is to tell Harry, it's like, you know what? Like, there's something up with you. Like, there's something different, and different isn't exactly good. Like, Winter accuses Harry of gambling again, and Harry's like, no, I'm not gambling again. I'm not doing this. So Winter is to immediately just tell him, like, hey, but, like, you need to get back on like a 12-step program immediately. Like you need something. And like I can order you to do it, but like I want to like be nice about this. And so Harry's like, okay, like I'll go and like I'll seek treatment and like thanks. So and so now we have to transition to eventually having Davey show up at Rachel and Woody's place, uh, mentioning how much he technically owns of them and can control them, and that Davey wants Leveler, like they're kind of their big thing, and so that leads to uh, Davey firing Woody. And so both Rachel and Woody are to leave because Davey is just so tempted to just fire all of them. And so we have Woody that ends up going back into the office and to talk to Davey and just like, dude, I'm not going to take his crap anymore. And so eventually what is to end up happening is that Davey is to supposedly get pushed out this window one way or another to land on the streets and to be killed. So, like, there was evidently some explosion of sorts, and so Davey had went through a window. So, immediately since Woody had escaped from this, immediately Harry and all the guys are looking into Woody's family, like kind of seeing if he would go into any place that like they're trying to figure out how to track him down. And so Harry is to eventually tell Orwell, because like it kind of seems that eventually both Harry and Orwell are the only ones that are kind of like working on this, because Surrey is away right now. So Harry makes the consensus that, well, how about like I go on and think of like what game that Woody was playing. Oh, it was Demon Slayer. So Harry is to mention like, hey, like maybe he's online gaming somewhere. Maybe we can track him down that way. And so both Harry and Orwell are to go on to to find here. And Harry's just like, well, I guess since you're my only last resort, I guess I'm gonna have to go with you. And Orwell is like, come on, like man, like I'm like sick of being like the lowest man on the totem pole. And like eventually we're gonna see what ends up happening with Orwell in this episode, and you'll probably feel bad for him. So or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll just like, good for you. But I'm like, no, I like Orwell. You're like, yeah, like if anything, like he made mistakes, and now like he's making his bed and lying into it. So like that's what's happening. So so they find Woody at this one hotel where he's gaming, and so they take him in and interrogate him. And so while that is going on, we have Surrey who's trying to follow up a lead. So Woody is to be interrogated, but he's lawyered up. And so Harry is to try to question Woody, but eventually Surrey is to call Harry, mentioning that she's following up a lead. She's going to find Rachel. So, because Surrey was to download all the stuff from Davey's computer and figure out what had happened, that it seemed that the virus had actually been coming from Rachel's computer. So, because supposedly Harry was to have Davey come in because like he had an anonymous tip, which was Rachel. So, but anyways, so if anything, Harry has to get pulled away from his interrogation because they found out that the death of Davey was done by an accident. So they are clearing Woody of all charges, and so Harry had got the voicemail of Surrey saying that she was going after Rachel, and so Harry is now going to follow her. So uh, Harry is to eventually find Surrey, who was locked in some room while Rachel was to get away. And so, really, these two are kind of having this shouting match about Surrey going it alone. And so Surrey's like, "Yeah, so what? I thought I had a lead, and this was actually like it seems that Surrey is like getting better at being a detective, sadly enough, than Harry is. That it seems like she's getting better at this than Harry, and that's kind of sad. Where like Harry is like chasing down the wrong rabbit hole consistently through this season. So uh so if anything, like Harry is to continue holding on to the laptop, and they're going to try to track Rachel via this laptop that Harry's to have. And so Harry is to go into a shower, and then all of a sudden, Rachel is to release this virus onto this laptop, which is to uh, burn it on, or to set it on fire. And so Harry is now seeing his apartment getting roasted once he's to get out of the shower, and so Harry like tries to get as much water and stuff from on him as he can. So Harry just goes out of his apartment with this being a thing all in blaze. So Harry goes to the hospital, and Anna and Daisy are there. So eventually, Harry is to talk with Anna, and Anna is to tell Harry some information about his case, which is like, ooh, like so Anna is really trying to help like Harry out. Isn't that nice? What a nice change of pace for Anna to just have some brownie points for Harry, because Anna is, of course, with Johnny, and so Johnny had mentioned that it seemed that Rachel had been completely, like, owned by Davey. Like, not just, like, what she was working on, like, everything. Like, Davey basically owned Rachel like a slave. Like, she couldn't go anywhere, like, she couldn't do anything, and so like that would give Rachel all the motive in the world to take out Davey and like try to just derail the whole project. Uh so Orwell is to make his way into Winter's office, and Winter is to see a piece of paper of Orwell's because Orwell wants a transfer out of here, out of the department. I'm like, no, Orwell, stay. We want you on the show. Like, it would be kind of cool to have, like, Orwell be in another branch of somewhere, and then Harry has to, like, consistently keep going over there and, like, working with him, but I don't think that's going to happen. Um, but maybe like the transfer won't work out because maybe Orwell will eventually just uh like get back into the good graces of people. But anyways, so yeah, that was kind of sad. Uh so now like Harry and Surrey are talking to Woody about Rachel, and so that leads to Woody talking about the leveler, uh, how Rachel wanted to like even skip lunches at some points to check that the leveler was like okay. So it seemed that the leveler was at some vault somewhere, and so Harry and Surrey's like, okay, we gotta go to this vault. So uh, Harry is to find out that Rachel is at this bank. And so Harry is to go in to go into the vault to see that Rachel is to have this leveler in this case from this vault. So Harry figures out that Rachel wanted to ruin Davey's business, and that Rachel is to all of a sudden, she wanted to ruin Davey's business. She didn't want to ruin anyone's life. She didn't want to kill anybody. Mary was just an accident. The whole proceeding thing that they were doing, was basically the launch thing was running late, and Rachel did this thing on a timer, and so she didn't mean to kill Mary. It was just a mistake. It was an accident, but still murder. So Rachel is to also put out or bring out a bomb, because she had made some homemade bomb that I guess she got bizarrely from the black market, and so that leads to have Harry just say, well, okay, Rachel, this case to get into the leveler has a combination. How about this? How about I go, and if I can figure out the combination to this case, then I can see the leveler. And so Rachel is like, well, you figuring out that combination is impossible. And so Harry goes, figures it out, opens this thing, and then also, while Rachel is just so confused about this, Harry goes and grabs Rachel, chucks her out of the vault, and seals the vault. The bomb goes off, and then Harry arrests Rachel for murder. So Harry goes to Richard's apartment because he is to be out of clothes, and Richard and him are the same size, and so I'm are they gonna do something with Richard, with Rich? I need all this Richard is in frame for 10 seconds is just kind of goofy to me. It's having this guy here barely on screen is just kind of I guess he can get a pretty decent check for doing very little work, but come on, let's have something for Richard to actually do in this show. I'm not saying write him in some bizarre-ish way, but have him do something. So Harry is to go out with Isabel, and here's the thing, we had Eve talking to Harry earlier in this episode, and so Eve was talking to Harry and mentioning how that Isabel could be Harry's worst luck decision. That eventually Harry is going to not going to be in the best place if he continues on with Isabel. And so that leads to Harry now talking to Isabel and talking about that text was very coincidental, that it seems that Harry is to get things from Isabel on purpose. It seems like there is a bunch of coincidences that are way too often tied with Isabel calling Harry or something, and Harry's gonna try to quite possibly get to the bottom of this, but I don't think he's gonna press at it right now. But he had just this kind of question, and Isabel just kind of deflected, and so it just led them to just go off and just have a nice rest of their night. But Harry was really quiet throughout the whole night because I guess he was thinking or planning on trying to come up with words to say to Isabel for the whole night, and so eventually he finally just said it. So And I think that's the way the episode ends. If there's anything else that I didn't bring up, then I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.